Hi guys. Okay, so in our last video we talked about the title, Fahrenheit 451, which is the temperature at which paper ignites, because Ray Bradbury is writing about a society that burns. And we also talked about the first sentence, which shows us that it was a pleasure to burn. So Ray Bradbury is creating this really great juxtaposition here. So juxtaposition is where you place two things side by side to create contrast. And the contrast is in pleasure and burn, right? Because they have very different connotations. Burn has a negative connotation, pleasure has a positive connotation. And so he's creating this juxtaposition to emphasize, again, that this is a society that's very different from what we would expect. That this is not the same as the society we live in today. So he's creating here a futuristic, imaginary society. And we're going to find out that this society is set sometime in the distant future. And he never tells us exactly where, but from certain clues we can guess that it's maybe in Chicago. And that things are very different from how they are today. And we're going to see a little more about what this society is like in this second paragraph. So let's start reading the second paragraph together. It was a special pleasure to see things eaten, to see things blackened and changed. With the brass nozzle in his fists, with this great python spitting its venomous kerosene upon the world, the blood pounded in his head, and his hands were the hands of some amazing conductor, playing all the symphonies of blazing and burning to bring down the tatters and charcoal ruins of history. With his symbolic helmet numbered 451 on his stolid head, and his eyes all orange flame with the thought of what came next, he flicked the igniter, and the house jumped up in a gorging fire that burned the evening sky red and yellow and black. He strode in a swarm of fireflies. He wanted, above all, like the old joke, to shove a marshmallow on a stick in the furnace, while the flapping pigeon-wing books died on the porch and lawn of the house. While the books went up in sparkling whirls and blew away on the wind, turned dark with burning. Montag grinned the fierce grin of all men singed and driven back by flame. He knew that when he returned to the firehouse, he might wink at himself, a minstrel man burnt corked in the mirror. Later, going to sleep, he would feel the fiery smile still gripped by his face muscles in the dark. It never went away, that smile. It never, ever went away, as long as he remembered. Okay, so we're introduced here to what this society does and our main character. So let's go back to this sentence with the brass nozzle in his fist. His here, we're told, in the third paragraph, is Montag. And Montag is our protagonist. He's our main character. And we're going to hear the story largely from his perspective. And in the opening, it describes with the brass nozzle in his fists. So what's happening here is Montag is a fireman. But he's not a fireman the way we would expect today. He's a fireman who is spitting venomous kerosene upon the world. So let's define kerosene. Kerosene is a type of flammable gas. And so this brass nozzle here that's being described is the fire hose. But again, this is not like society today. This is a futuristic society. And so the fire hose is not spitting water, it is spitting instead kerosene. Because he's not putting out the fire. These firemen actually start fires. And there's this great literary device here where he describes this fire hose. He calls it a great python. So he says the brass nozzle is this great python. So the literary device that he's using here is a metaphor because it's a direct comparison without using like or as. And again, let's talk about connotation for a minute. Python is a type of snake. So he's comparing the hose to a snake. And in Western culture, snakes have a very negative connotation. They're associated with evil. They're associated with something dangerous and bad. And he's using this hose, this brass nozzle, this great python with its venomous kerosene in order to bring down the tatters and charcoal ruins of history. He is creating this blazing and burning. Basically, what he's doing here is he is burning down a house. And we find out why here when he says, the flapping pigeon wing books died on the porch. So this house is being burned because they have books. We have another really great literary device happening here when he describes the house and when he describes the books. He talks about how this house jumped. He talks about how the fire is gorging, and he talks about these flapping pigeon-winged books that are dying on the porch. And all of these things are personification. He's giving human characteristics to this fire that's gorging, right, which means to be eating excessively. This house that's jumping in the flame, almost as if the house is being hurt. And these books that are dying. Talking about books dying and comparing them, again, we have another metaphor here, comparing them to pigeons makes this act seem really horrific. These aren't just simple pages. This isn't just paper and ink that is being destroyed. He wants us to see that it's more than paper and ink. It's like these people are killing helpless books, helpless animals, pigeons, dying on the porch. And for Montag, this is enjoyable, right? He likes this. It's a special pleasure. He wants to shove a marshmallow on a stick in the furnace. He is taking a special pleasure in everything that he's doing. And when he goes home, he has this fierce grin. Again, he enjoys this. He enjoys his job, which is to not put out fires, but to start them. To not save lives, but to destroy, specifically, books and those who harbor books.